Yes, sir, we can start.
It's now 36 ROD. Let me share the screen first. So we have discussing the research, right? MIS. So under that, we discussed the quantitative research methods, right? Different research methods, and we came to the qualitative, right? Version of research. So this is what I guess we've discussed, right? As the last slide of the lecture. This is what we discussed, right? Finally. So today we can move on to identify and look into different options coming under qualitative research. Okay. So I want to
recording in progress.
So good morning. So we can start. We can proceed with this slide. So this is what we finalized, right, in the previous session. So we introduced qualitative research, and we identified that qualitative research can provide more deep insights, right, and also context-rich findings, right. Only the concern is that we cannot validate or generalize findings, because usually, you know, we collect data relatively small sample, right? We purposefully limit the sample size to a small amount because that enables the researcher to go into deep level of the research. Right? Let's say if we interview 100 people, so we may not be able to get more right insights. But if you interview maybe 10, 15 people, 20 people, right, for 2 hours, 3 hours, so you can obtain more deeper, right, insights from these interviews. So the purpose of qualitative research is not to generalize or right conclude. So that is what we need to understand, right? Typically, by undertaking qualitative research, we try to get insights, try to get a kind of preliminary understanding of this, right? Certain things actually no meaning of quantifying. Instead, we want to know emotions of people, right? Their understanding. Those things matter for the researcher, not the quantity or the number. So in that case, so we prefer to conduct up to qualitative approach, because that is more consistent with what we want to achieve with the research. Right? So let's look at the different options that are available for the researchers if the research is interested in qualitative aspects. Let's move on. So these are different options available for the researchers, right? So first we have the depth interviews, then focus group, is also available. Then projective techniques, meta-analysis, means and method, ethnography, and finally we can also use another option we call look-in research. Right. So let's start with the in-depth interviews. So in-depth interviews actually is a very popular qualitative data collection method, where the researcher or the researcher team can interview people, the selected sample, maybe 20, 30, uh, right, using kind of in-depth way. That's why we call in-depth interviews, right? Also called one-on-one interview. It could last maybe 20 minutes, 1 hour, depending on the problem that you are examining, or even that can extend the time duration of the interview to around 2 hours or even 3 hours, depending on how the interview is going on, whether the participant is willing to reveal their opinions. So when we conduct quantitative studies, usually the people who provide their data, we call respondents. But in the context of qualitative research, the researchers prefer to call them participants. So there are different terminologies in quantitative and qualitative research. So and mostly qualitative research flows as in the interviews flow non-structured way of communicating ideas, and that means in quantitative study, that we have a predetermined question. So all the questions, scales, all these things are pre-decided. But when we undertake in-depth interviews, usually we have only an interview guide. It's a kind of guide that reminds the interviewer to the areas that the person needs to elaborate more. Get the people to talk more. So it's kind of a guide for the interviewer. Sometimes there is a flow. Even the certain points now we have listed in the latter part of the interview guide, but sometimes based on what your participants is saying, sometimes you have to ask that point at the early part. That's why it's a guide. But only thing is that you need is a kind of a checklist that you can make sure that you cover all the elements listed in the interview guide during the interview. So it's a non-structured. Sometimes we call free flowing. So interviews should not be like question and answer session. It's a kind of a conversation. So they are the interviewers should have a kind of set of skills to how to do a very effective interview. So that's why qualitative researchers usually recruit well-experienced people to conduct interviews. They know how to obtain the information from the participants, And so this is we call in-depth because we let people to talk more, So we do not always disturb the interviewee or the participant. So we let the person to talk. But from time to time, you can ask probing questions. That means if you are not happy about the depth of the answer given by the participant, so then you can ask more probing. You can probe. So you can say can you explain that bit more? So you said this, what do you think that happened? So can you describe more in more detail? So one person say, I was totally disappointed with that incident, with that particular employee. So he stopped. So that is not enough. So then you need to ask, so what happened? right? So when the person said this story, still he did not tell why he was disappointed. So you can further ask. So you said that you were disappointed. Why? So why you was disappointed? So likewise, like you need to ask probing questions when necessary, not always. And with the right consent of the participants, so it's better to record the session because we can't take notes. Some people are talking very speed, right? So better to record, then later on we can listen to these records and we can transcribe. Transcribe means we can type all the words, question and words told by the person to you, right? So transcribe means that is typewriting all the things what happened during the lecture, so during the interview. And deductive and inductive thematic analysis is that is usually used. Actually, sometimes we use content analysis. Content analysis means you can count number of words, right, emerged during the interview, now frequencies of some words. That's a content analysis. More often, qualitative researchers use thematic analysis. Thematic analysis means when you analyze these things, right, actually the researchers first, right, if you are the qualitative researcher, first you need to read these transcripts, right, at least 3 times. As once you transcribe the answers of the participants, now you have got these transcripts, the documents, right? So you need to read few times to familiar with the answers. Of all, let's say there are 20 transcripts now. So you need to read these 20 transcripts. It could be lengthy, but qualitative research is time taking. That's the nature of qualitative research. So you need to read several times to be familiar with this, right? You need to immersed. That is what we call. You need to get immersed in the answers, right? And try to understand the information from the participant's point of view, right? What the person is trying to say. Then, so when you are familiar and when you try to analyze this data in qualitative research, today we have the Mascuda qualitative data software, in vivo, right? Is the most popular one, very expensive. So they give very convenient platform for you to analyze the data. You can code, right? You can identify categories, common categories. So thereafter you can join these few categories into one theme, right? Because some ideas, right, repeat again and again across 20 interviews. So if you see them, same idea repeat in maybe different words, but same idea, right? Repeatedly emerged from the answers. So there you can first code, right? This is one repeating idea. You first code with the label. Then, right, similar labels can be joined, combined to develop one category. That broad idea. Then several categories, you see that they come under one broader, right? Another broader concept. So then you combine maybe 2 or 3 categories under one theme. So likewise, like at the end of the data analysis, perhaps you may find 4 themes, 5 themes with your what the participants said. Right, so that is quite interesting, and in vivo and Mascuda, these qualitative data analysis softwares cannot analyze data for you. So that's a very important thing you need to understand. It's different when compared with quantitative data, because when you feed the quantitative data, so the SPSS, right, any quantitative data analytical software can do the job for you. Just you need to give the command. So they do the job for you, those softwares. But in qualitative softwares, actually they only give you the platform, very convenient platform. The researcher still has to analyze the data. It's subjective. Quantitative research are mostly objective, but qualitative researchers do not accept the objective reality. So they think everything is subjective. The truth in Sri Lanka may not be the truth in India or the USA. It's contextualized, right? All this knowledge, these things are constructed by people. Constructed by people. They are not real. The reality, right, varies from society to society, particularly in context to context. So how we can find, right, one reality across all this context? No. So that is the argument. Right? So the qualitative researcher can be biased to a certain extent, right? But the person tries to explain something, right, in a particular context, right? So the qualitative researcher has to give labels, develop themes, right? So, and that is quite sometimes interesting and sometimes, very tricky. Now, let's say, good example. Don't take this as any political law, right? This is a good example. Now, when you do a research here, right, in Jaffna, so when you go there, you see during the last few years, mainly after the end of the war, so there are a lot of new temples, Buddhist temples. Buddhist temples. So so one label may be one code may be, right, increasing number of temples, right? And so you can see another finding that more single Buddhist people visit Jaffna, right? And again, you can see that some the war-related aspects related to the Tamil Tigers, right? So they have been removed by the government. So that is another. You can also give another quote to that finding. So these are things. Imagine when you go there and when you interview people, you see that these things emerge. Sometimes even Tamil people talk these things repeatedly. So eventually, right now you see initially now increasing number of temples, Buddhist temples, right? But the final theme, this is an example of it. Don't think that I'm supporting this thing, but it's an example. It's a good example. That's why I took this example. So at the end, perhaps your theme would be, right, spreading Sinhala Buddhist domination in the northern province. And that's a broader theme, right? So data do not, right, directly tell that thing. So there are certain things you develop categories by merging these categories. Eventually, you give the theme name, label the theme, right? The Sinhala Buddhist dominance in the northern province. See, that is why we say that the qualitative researcher need to analyze the data. Okay. But again, in the meantime, in quantitative research, we want to know that whether these measurements are valid and reliable. Similarly, qualitative researchers, they want to convince the reader when you publish a paper based on your MBA research. If you undertake qualitative research, when you publish a paper in a good journal, academic journal, so they ask to what extent these findings are trustworthy. So there are certain techniques, right? You can, as a qualitative researcher, you can display your trustworthiness of a findings, like member checking, triangulation, right? So there are, right, likewise 2 or 3 techniques, right? So by applying these techniques, you can make sure that these findings are trustworthy, right? Likewise, eventually you can obtain very rich insights after conducting this sort of qualitative research, in-depth interview, right? And second option is focus group discussions. So this is also becoming very popular, right? Research option or approach for particularly the business organizations, right? Academic researchers, they use this, but not frequently. But for practical problems, companies can, right, use focus group discussions. Okay. Usually, here we conduct a kind of discussion with, actually this should be 8 to 12 participants, right? 8 to 12 participants. Usually minimum is 8, maximum is 12. That's the right rule of thumb. And you invite, depending on what you want to discuss, right? Maybe about your new branding, maybe you are going to, right, reposition your brand, right? Before reposition, you want to know whether the current positioning is diluted or outdated in the minds of customers, right? So likewise, you can have a kind of focus group discussion. So you can invite at a time. If you take, there may be, like 2, 3, 5 discussion, but for one discussion, I usually invite maybe 10 people, 8 to 12, and you identify the peer that individuals who can share their ideas, knowledge with you as a researcher. Right? They are well informed people about the problem, right? Maybe they are frequent customers, so they know better about your branding, that brand positioning. So you can invite. You first need to identify the right people. So then you can formally invite these people, giving the purpose, objective, right? And and then you can conduct this focus group discussion, maybe 1 hour, right, for 2 hours, depending on how it is going. And usually, the in-depth interviews, you can tape or videotape, right, your entire focus group discussion. Right, so that is very important. This is more important because at a time, not only one person is talking. So in a focus group discussion, at a time, maybe 2 or 3 people talk together. So it's very difficult to take notes or identify all these things. So better to record the entire discussion after getting their consent. Otherwise, it is unethical. And so usually, now these things, these focus group discussions are conducted using two-way mirrors. So there you can see the picture. Two-way mirrors. So they are, this is in the left side, you can see the management team, and they can see, they can listen what these participants are talking. So there's a moderator who is conducting the discussion. Sometimes there's a helper to get clarifications, take notes, right? And the right side, in the people who are in this group, they don't see these people. That's why we call two-way mirror. But the management team can observe what's going on here. So in qualitative research, actually not only what people say, even facial expressions, whether they smile, those also can be important right findings of the data. So so with this focus group discussion, actually we can obtain more rich information, particularly due to this group dynamics. Group dynamics. So what does it mean? Group dynamics. So when you conduct an in-depth interview, right, you interview each person separately. But in this case, several bunch of people right talk together. Right. So when in a group, when we talk, that would be more productive because we call that group dynamics. There's a kind of chain effect. Now you say something, right? And that can, stimulate my idea, right? So now I joined the discussion. I also add certain things to what the other person said. Maybe another one in this lecture. So she may have different opinions. So she reveal that, right? So that can further stimulate what I said before. Then I can further add something. So that's a kind of, there's a chain effect. People are adding new things to what others are saying. So during that group dynamics, perhaps the researcher may find very informative findings, rich information from the focus group discussion. So again, since this is a qualitative data, we need to make sure that these findings are trustworthy, right? So there are some techniques. You can read these things later on, right? And trustworthiness, how a qualitative researcher can ensure the trustworthiness. So that's a separate topic, right? And today, online focus groups are growing. It's becoming very popular among the business people, right? And they can obtain very, very informative things from these people. Sometimes we cannot obtain from undertaking large-scale quantitative surveys, right? So there are a lot of good things of focus group discussions. And particularly, these interviews are again unstructured. You don't have a kind of questionnaire, but you may have a discussion guide, like interview guide. So certain things you have put in the discussion guide so that you can bring the discussion attention to all these points before you end the discussion. Right, and again it is free flowing, right? So it can start from anywhere. You may change the question order depending on how the discussion is going on, right? And it's a group interview, obviously, and particularly the moderator, he is playing a very important role. Okay, then we will come to that one. The moderator starts the discussion with a broad topic. So there's a purpose behind it. Sometimes you are going to talk about the reality programs, how the university students understand the reality programs. That is what you are doing with the interview, in the discussion. But you not jump directly into this topic. Perhaps you can ask the students how the things going on, whether you have started your lectures, you are attending university physically these days. So maybe the current political situations. So that is something like that. The moderator may start the discussion, right? So if you start with that sort of very familiar, right, question, so then everybody would like to talk. So that's the reason, right? So we can very easily develop the rapport, right? So everybody wants to tell that's very familiar topic. But later on, maybe after 5 minutes or maybe like 7 minutes, the moderator, he is a very skilled person. So he knows how to take the discussion gradually to the topic. Right? And thereafter, he can ask more specific questions during the discussion. So the moderator is a very important person, right? Because that is based on his experience, eventually determines whether these focus group findings are important, right? Otherwise, if the moderator is not well experienced person, though you conduct the discussion for 2 hours, the findings may not be rich, maybe kind of very superficial findings, right? The moderator first develop the rapport with the people, right? Make everybody relaxed, and always the right encouraging interactions among these right people in the discussion. And more often, right, we listen to what people have to say rather than asking right frequent questions from one person to another person. So that can disturb the free-flowing nature of the discussion. You, as a moderator, you need to listen, but certain time you need to interrupt. Let's say one person is too talkative; he doesn't let others to talk. So then you can disturb that person, right? You can politely ask the person to stop and give the chance to another person. And if you see that the one person is always silent, so you can politely ask that person to start talking. If you know that the discussion is going in a different path, again that has come to the politics, because we like to talk politics, right? Sri Lanka is a highly politicized society. So as a moderator, now you need to again take the discussion to the topic. So likewise, from time to time, you need to interrupt, you need to intervene, but in most cases, you have to make sure that people have time to talk. Right? So everyone gets a chance to speak. Likewise, so moderator has a very important role. Right. So that is focus group discussion, and another way that you can obtain qualitative, more deep insights, particularly in the management field, marketing, HRM, likewise. Give me just 1 minute. So any questions, clarifications? So once you conduct the focus group discussion, again you have to go to the analysis. Okay, like I told you before, you need to transcribe the discussion. Right, it may be a bit difficult because maybe 1-2 people talk together in certain sometimes. Anyway, you have to transcribe them. Then you need to analyze these things using content analysis or thematic analysis, likewise. Yes, there's one question. Good. Yes, respondents are recruited through screener questionnaire. I mean, not a questionnaire. That means we want to maybe ask, right, verbally, whether that person suits the purpose of the discussion or the interview. Right? So we want to know that, for example, so we want to understand whether our current positioning is outdated. So they are before we invite a person, we want to know whether that person is familiar with our brand, whether that person is a frequent buyer, and whether that person can talk about the topic. So if so, is it clear now? Only purpose is to make sure that person suit your research, whether that person has information to share with you. Right. Explain triangulation. Triangulation means actually it's a very good way that we can make sure our findings are trustworthy. Right. Triangulation means we investigate the same problem, right, using different angles. That is what we call triangulation. There are different ways that we can use triangulation in a qualitative research. First, we call data triangulation. Data triangulation means you analyze the same problem using different data sources. A good example is case study. So when you undertake a case study, you do not collect data only from one data source. You observe, you read them into minutes, you collect the past records. Maybe you can conduct some small scale survey, right? You can attend their meeting, you can observe how people work. See, so you collect data from different sources and analyze the problem. Right? For example, in my PhD research, right, I did my PhD research in tourism, right? The autobiographical memory of tourism experiences of people, tourists. So there I analyzed, I developed a scale to measure that memorable tourism experiences. So there I collected data from different. First I interviewed international tourists, 35 tourists. Then I undertook a survey with 800 participants, another data source. And I cross-checked these findings with another data source, that is the travel blog entries. So I analyzed 200 very lengthy travel blog narratives published by travelers, tourists. So that is what we call data triangulation. So all these three data sources, if you can see that findings are similar. Same themes emerge across these three data sources. Triangulation doesn't mean that at least 3, even 2 is enough. Okay? Triangulation but if you have 3 data sources, that is better. So eventually I impressed my examiners. So I found these things from qualitative interviews. When I conduct the fact analysis, again I found same factors from quantitative data. So when I analyze travel blog sites, again qualitative, right? So again I found same themes. So across these 3 data sources, findings are same. So what does it mean? Right? So the audience can rely on my findings. That's the data triangulation. Similarly, you can have the methodological triangulation. So you can investigate the data, investigate the problem using qualitative methods, quantitative methods, and you can compare. Right? It's a methodological triangulation. Another one is the investigative triangulation. In qualitative studies, more often we use that way. Let's say now, right? So I conduct research. Let's say I conduct research with Dushan. Right? So once I collect data and once I transcribe the data, now I do coding, identify categories and developing things by myself separately. Right? Now I have developed 4 themes, so maybe 5 themes from the findings, from the transcripts. Then I ask Dusan sir to do the data analysis separately. Now he also identified, right, doing coding, identifying categories and developing themes. So later on we compare what I found and what he found, whether these themes are similar or not. We won't get 100% similar. This is a qualitative, like the way I find, way I interpret data may be different from Dusan's. But if we see that in most cases these finding themes are similar, that further confirms our findings are trustworthy. So is it clear? Did I give the answer?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So that is the what we call the focus group discussion. How focus group discussion is conducted by companies, the researchers. Moving on. So if you have any question, you can ask. Anytime you can disturb. Then there's another technique called projective technique. Projective technique. So this is very useful if you want to uncover certain things that people do not want to freely talk to you. Right? That's why we call projective. So people don't want to reveal certain things directly with you. Maybe their personal things, feelings, right? Secret things, right? So there's no way that we can uncover, reveal these things because people don't want to freely share these things with you. Instead, like asking directly, now using maybe in-depth interviews may not work because people may not tell you. Even focus group discussion, like mostly focus group discussion, people will not tell you because there are other people in the discussion. They don't want others to know their things. But in projective technique, you may not directly ask the question, but using certain techniques, you try to project the answer. That's why we call projective technique. Right? And more often you use the third party technique. Right? Now, for example, if I ask you, what is your opinion about this maybe highly controversial thing, I'm asking, what is your opinion about this? In most cases, you may not tell the truth. But if I ask this way, okay, what friend would think of this? That's the third part. Right? We give the person to hide their face and project the answer using his or her friend. See, that's a projective technique. Yaluage margin aputrega. Yaluada. Third party technique. Right? But eventually he is projecting his feeling, like his opinion. But he is telling that is not my opinion, that's my friend's opinion. But actually he is telling what he's thinking of that. Right? We can ask, what about your neighbors? How do you think about this thing? Your neighbors. So that's a third party technique. Right? And disguise test means we allow people to hide their face. right? So that is why we call projective. People don't want to tell you, but we try to project the answer using different techniques, right? So, so is it clear? Is it clear or not?
Sir, it was clear. I have a small doubt. By using the projection technique, how we can ensure we are getting the answer of the person, because he is referring to his friend or whatever.
Yeah, but actually when we do research, there are limitations, no? There are limitations, but if we can't get these things directly, controversial things, or certain that kind of private things, usually you can't get the full. If you can't get like these things from the respondent, something is better than nothing, no? So if you use this projective technique, at least you can get some. Now, if you analyze, you are not collecting data from one person, right? You can take this data from, right, maybe 30, 40. So we can't say that all these 40 people are, right, lying. No. In most cases, right, the researchers have found this actually what these people are projecting from other people, they are projecting their feelings. Right? So is it clear now?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
We can't right, make sure that this one is 100%. Can't any research we can't, right, assure that. Yes. But anyway, that's a really good question. So there are several associations, right? So word association means you give a list of words and we ask what comes to your mind first. If it is a kind of controversial stuff, you can ask what, right, comes to your wife, right, or your friend. What do you think? So all these techniques you can use the third party technique. If it is that is not right, noise. Right. You can relate, right, all these with the third party technique, but even a word association. So now, for example, in a restaurant, you give a list of words like fast food, soft drinks, right, light diets. So, for example, fast food, what comes to the participants' mind first? So they can write what comes. So when they write soft drinks, what comes to the mind first? Whether Coca-Cola, right, Pepsi. So then eventually the majority, right, has written Coke. So that's most popular brand in customers' mind when they come to the restaurant. Word associations. What comes to the mind first? Then sentence completion means, again, right, if the people do not want to tell certain things, you can give a part of the sentence and you let the remaining part to be completed by the participant. Right? Sentence completion. And again, if you write, feel that the person may not tell the truth, then you can write relate that to the third party technique. Right? Fill in the complete the remaining sentence by referring that question to your friend or your neighbor or your colleague. Right? So sentence completion. For example, now so when right, when going to a when I deciding to, or when going to right, spa, right, what fact, right, the most important thing that I may consider. So that's the part of the sentence. So you leave the remaining part to be completed by the participant. Or you can ask, when right, your friend selects a spa, what factors may hinder of his decision, or the factors that hinder of his decision? You do not ask question. You give a part of the sentence. You give the remaining part blank. So the person, right, complete the remaining part, may be referring to a third party. Right. So sentence completion. Then photo, visual or storytelling. So let's say stories telling an option. So you give a part of the story, right, which is kind of a general story, and remaining part of the story should be completed by the participant. So again, right, he can complete the remaining stuff by referring the remaining part to the third party, third person. Right? So that's the storytelling. Part of the story is given by the researcher. Remaining part should be completed, right, by the participant. And visual or photo, right, option mean that you can give a right photo, maybe a cartoon character. It's a good example is cartoon. Right, cartoon. For example, right, let's take an example like restaurant. You give a right cartoon. Two people are sitting. Two cartoon right persons. So one person is asking question, how is the food here? And the second person is not a cartoon character. Second person is right answering, but that is in an empty bag. So the participant has to fill it. Right? But again, it's a third party. The participant fills that using the second character. So there are two cartoon characters in the picture. One person is asking question. Second person is answering that question. What could be that answer given by the second person? It's not your answer. What would be that answer given by the second cartoon character? It's a third party. But eventually, the researchers know the participant is projecting his opinion. Right? So that is when role playing means again, right? You ask the person, you give a kind of scenario, maybe campaign handling scenario. You right. If you explain this sort of service problem, service issue, so how you would act. So please write, show us how you would react. So we ask per person to play a role in a particular situation. Right? If you are face a kind of very highly disappointing critical incident with the service. So this is what you experience. So we use scenario. So as a customer, how you would react. So please show us. Right? If that customer is your spouse, no, third party. If your spouse experience that sort of very bad incident, how she would react or how he would react. Right? So those techniques are called projective techniques, usually coming under qualitative research. So this is very popular to obtain certain things that people do not want to directly let the researcher to know. Okay. Let's move on. Then next approach, the means end approach. Sometimes we call laddering approach as well. The means end approach is based on the theory that product and service attributes are associated with consequences or product benefits and risk. And even the person who values the product can help consumers fulfill. Simply, right? The means end approach is that assume consumers purchase products by looking at certain observable features, right? Attributes. But if you thoroughly understand why customers actually have purchased that brand or that particular product, apparently even customers may think that he or she purchased that due to that feature. But under this labeling technique, when you ask questions why, likewise number of times, right? So you can end with the end. You start with the means. Means mostly the fee, maybe the feature or the attribute of a product. Sometimes when customers think that that's the major reason he or she purchased, means. But at the end of the interview, you may come to the end. That means why actually, even the person may not be aware, but eventually you try to identify that. Why that person, customer actually purchased. Is it due to his personal value? Sometimes. Apparently seems to be the reason seems to be the particular function or the feature. But eventually customers, right? Even that person doesn't know, but at the end of the interview, even that person comes to know, oh my God, I have purchased this due to this value, not due to that feature. So that is why we call means and end. You start with the means, apparently why you purchased, but eventually why you really purchased. End. Right? So there we employ the laddering into technique. So we start with means. So we ask probing questions, why, until we find the real reason behind the purchase decision. Right? So this is used to uncover the underlying emotions, consequences, and at the end, personal values that drive consumer choice. So let's take an example. Right? The result is a value chain linking a product attribute to its functional consequences. First, you start with the attributes or the features, asking about why you purchase. Customers more often relate their purchase decision to a feature or an attribute. That's typical. So then you try to identify, okay, what are the functional consequences of those features? Then customers think. So thereafter you ask, okay, what are the psychological consequences of those functional consequences? So we take the customer to more deeper level. So we continue the conversation until, right, even the customer clarifies, so this is the reason that I have purchased, not due to that function or feature under the personal value. So there you can see, this is the sequence. First, we try to uncover attributes that have influenced the customers to buy the brand. Then we try to uncover, okay, with these attributes, what are the functional consequences that customer wanted to realize? Are there psychological consequences, right, behind these functional consequences? So eventually, what are the values, the value system that govern the purchase decision of the customer? State of mind. Okay. So this is, as I told you, this is a good example. Now, when we ask questions like people who or like person who purchased a sport utility vehicle instead of a minivan, so probably a customer thinks due to not sliding doors, he preferred this vehicle. Then during the interview, we may find no sliding doors. The functional result is, outcome is style design. That's what customer thinks. So then when we continue the discussion, so then the customer knows that he feels trendy. That's why he has purchased it. We continue the discussion, and eventually the customer may think, oh, that is accepted my peers. Right? So that's the way. So apparently customer think due to not sliding doors he purchased, but now both the researcher and customer know due to that value the person has purchased with that motive. Now this is like learning technique, it's a very brief example. Interviewer. So what is the primary reason for you to drive SUV instead of a minivan? The participant said, an SUV just looks better than a boring mini. You can see the probing question. What do you mean by it looks better? The minivan looks like a sedan, and it has these ugly sliding doors. So now the interviewer want to make sure why is it too important to you not to have sliding doors? Now sliding doors is the functional feature. The customer thinks that he has purchased, not having sliding doors. But now we want to know what are the functional consequences. Why is it important to you not to have sliding doors? Because I want to drive a vehicle with a more stylish design, like an SUV. Stylish design now the functional consequence is emerging. Sometimes we have to ask 2 or 3 questions, right? Till you get this one, but this is a simple example. Directly, customer is saying expected answer, but this may not be the normal situation. Then the interview asks, why is it important to you that your vehicle have a stylish design? Now the research is trying to move to psychological consequences. Because it makes me feel trendy and more cutting edge to drive. It's a psychological values, that kind of the benefits actually. So the interviewer, he wants to make sure, okay, so the stylish design of your SUV makes you feel trendy. And then why does feeling trendy matters to you? Now we try to go to the end. It makes me feel good, my friend like what I bought and think I am trendy because I drive it instead of a minivan. My friends accept that. That can further enhance the right bond between myself and my friends. They appreciate my decision. Now we have come to the point. The person has not purchased the vehicle due to that not having the sliding doors. Actually, the inner reason behind this decision is accepted by his friends. His decision is appreciated by his colleagues. Right? Just to make so now the interviewer want to exactly know whether he has come to the end. Just to make sure I understand you. You drive an SUV because it doesn't have sliding doors, making you feel like you are driving a stylish vehicle. Since it has a stylish design, you feel like you are trendy for driving it. Feeling trendy makes you feel good because your friends like what you got. Is that correct? So the person say yes. So starting with functional features and ending with the real reason why customer has purchased means end. So that's also very popular research technique, qualitative research technique. So is it clear? Any questions? Now we got the power cut here. Right. So what's the time now? 9:41. Let's have a break after 10. Okay. So can we continue?
Yes, sir, sure.
Thank you. Next, ethnography. So this is also very popular social science research, particularly qualitative research, right? Technique, ethnography. So this is the root, cause of this research is social science, particularly this sociology, psychology. They use this method, but now this is becoming gradually becoming popular even in the management field, particularly among the marketers. Right? So, ethnographic research is a qualitative method where researchers observe and or interact with the studies participants in their real life environment, not 2 or 3 days during a prolonged time period. It's a kind of a prolonged observation, maybe 2 years, 3 years. The researchers live with the people and they know what people are genuinely do. Right? You know why this is becoming popular? Because the researchers, it's a very, very common understanding that there's a difference between what people say and what people do. That's a problem. So when we interview people, they are like saying something, but what they are doing actually at home totally different. How they doing shopping at a supermarket totally different. What they say during interview. So in any type of research, there's a risk whether we get the the genuine answers from the respondents. Even when we do survey, some people just stick without even reading the question. Right? But in this case, actually, we do not rely on what people say. Instead, we live with them. Right? By living with them, we try to understand their culture, how they make the decisions, how they use the product actually, how they decide to discard the product, when they decide to discard the brand, likewise. Okay. Now, when you hear this ethnographic research, a very, very popular research in Sri Lanka should come to mind. Not only in Sri Lanka, even in the he's a very popular researcher, even international. One of the professor of our university, the art faculty.
Is that Lankave Achakayo book?
Exactly, yes. Who is the professor's name? Can you remember the professor's name? Professor name? Yes. Right. So it's a very popular research in the world. He lived with beggars. So he studied beggars' life, not just asking questions from beggars, right? So he lived with beggars, right? And he understood what was really happening. Even sometimes he was in front of the university gate as a beggar. This is not the person, but this is what It's like this technique spreads across different disciplines, even in marketing. Right. So, example, Nokia. So when they introduced this low price version in African countries and right,
Recording in progress.
Upscale products fail, but still these areas this band is popular. So ethnography. Now, in tourism today, how even in a group tour, how tourists make decisions, how they interact, how they develop rapport, right? So the tour guide company can sometimes include this person. He is also traveling like other people, but actually he is not a traveler. He is researcher. He lives with these tourists. How tourists go though, how they decide, right? How long they want to spend in a time, attraction. So that person goes with the tourists. That person eat with these tourists, right? And the person observes how tourists make decisions and they behave during a tour. The ethnography. Okay, so that is also now it's a very popular research method. And then another one is the meta-analysis. Meta-analysis mean actually this was introduced by Professor Saltman. That is called ZMET technique, Saltman metaphor elicitation technique. ZMET. And so this is also becoming very popular because this is an entirely new way of collecting data and doing the research. This case, right? You let them know. Then we give them around 1 week to collect as many as pictures, photos, images. Then this is very important when you is cutting edge research, particularly emerging research, analyzing our brain. So that's why right now, that even marketers can right now. Color is preferred by customers by analyzing, not asking question, by analyzing brain waves today, neuroscience. Right? So some marketing degree programs now we include this consumer neuroscience as a subject, but it's still not developed in Sri Lanka. Right? But anyway, so due to this recent development of neuroscience, today we know that in most cases we think in terms of the images, not using the words. It's very interesting finding. We think in our brain, we think in terms of the images. But if you want to tell that to another person, the language has limitations. We can't fully project or fully describe what we think in our brain using images. So that's that. Right, you know that it's we relate that with අපි කියන්නේ සමනල කන්ද කොයිල් එකක් කනවා. Right. It's like big meal. Now in brain, the brain understand that using that image. Right? Or not, maybe another image to understand the images. Now, good example, if I asked you to describe your most romantic day of your life to me. Now I ask you to, okay, now remember the most romantic day of your life and okay. You may not me. Maybe we can use projective technique, but anyway, or we can use meta-fantasy. So now when you think in terms of words, so you remember that day in terms of pictures or images.
Recording in progress.
Right, fixed. So, right, it's a metaphor that people can easily understand, and that is okay. Now tell me, what is your romantic day? Now you in your brain, a lot of memories, pictures, images come to your mind, but when you try to describe that using the language, you can't do that. That's a problem. Those are the weak points of these other techniques, qualitative. In-depth interviews, focus group discussions, sometimes we can't fully describe what we think. So that's why this Saltman, developed this technique. Though you tell the story using words, you can relate your story with the pictures. That's why we give 1 week for the participants to collect as many as pictures. Even they can draw, right? Pictures, photos, images, whatever the things, right? To talk about your most romantic day. So please collect. You can draw. Then during that interview, so we ask people to describe these pictures. So then now they can better describe, because the language is now helped with images. See, so that is right? What we call CMET technique, but the Saltman has obtained the patent. Now, if you want to use this technique, we usually have to get the consent. Otherwise, it's unethical. So, right. So this is the reason. A lot goes in our mind that we are not aware of. There's right. Most of what influences what we say and do are below the level of our awareness. That's why we need new techniques to get at hidden knowledge, to get at what people don't know. 95% of the things during this neuroscience understanding, 95 of the things that we think are unconscious. We can uncover just 5%. But using these new techniques like neuroscience, metaphysics, so we are in a position to uncover these hidden things. Any questions, clarifications? Right. So then we can move on to the last things. Qualitative collection methods looking in. That means look at information from threads and posting on social media, including blogs and discussion from. This is online, right? Analyzing online data. Sometimes people looking in, and another popular term is, can you remember the previous one? Ethnograph. The electronic version of the ethnography today is known as netno. Ethno is replaced by net, internet. So this is becoming very popular today, and a lot of companies, not only academic researchers, but a lot of practitioners, they want to know. They try to get very rich insights from these online data. For me, right? Others. So there are a lot of data available free, right? It's very, very less expensive data. And that is not the main reason behind the popularity of this technique. It's less expensive. That's one reason, but not that's the main reason. The major reason is these data are unbiased and unobtrusive data. What does it mean? Unbiased and unobtrusive data. That means now we can compare two situations and you can understand that easily. Now, when you conduct an interview, sometimes when you ask a question, the participants may give maybe pleasing answers to please the interviewer. Sometimes the person may not tell the truth, as we noted before. Like he doesn't want let that person to know his feelings, maybe secret things, right? And sometimes researcher can manipulate the findings. Researcher can change the questions to obtain what he wants to obtain from the person. We call loaded questions. අපිට ඕන උත්තරේ ගන්න විදිහට ප්‍රශ්නයක් යනවා. For example, recently, price increments of two gas companies. It's not fair, isn't it? That's not a good research question. It's not fair, isn't it? So we expect the answer yes. Loaded questions, right? So we can't conduct research like that. We're biased. But when we conduct these questions, so that can be bias, researcher contaminate this information. Research can obtain the expected answers from the participants by changing the way that the person articulates the question likewise. But in this case, this is what people say, they are free. Now, let's take the travel blog sites. Now, for example, there's one site called Travel Blog Organization. So, thousands of travel blog entries have been posted by genuine travelers about Sri Lanka, India, Thailand, everywhere. If you want to do a good research about Sri Lankan image, so actually I did that, what tourists think of Sri Lanka. So I analyzed this blog. There are very lengthy stories about Sri Lankan experience posted by tourists. They are genuine data. That's the thing. They haven't posted these things for research purpose. They haven't been asked by researcher to post this post in favor of Sri Lanka. No, they are genuine. It's genuine post. Research unobtrusive. Researcher is not involved in that data. It's free, data they post. So when analyzing this data, actually we can obtain real things about Sri Lanka. If you interview a tourist, sometimes he may not tell you certain bad things. But when you analyze the blog data, so they have posted all these things, even negative things of Sri Lanka, right? So travel blogs, social media poll, reviews, hashtags. We can analyze hashtags, right? We can mapping hashtags, and we can see important connections, comments likewise. So again, we can use content analysis, thematic analysis, sentiment analysis. Mean that eventually we try to find overall whether there's a negative or positive feeling about our country, feeling about that brand's sentiment analysis. Hashtag network mapping. So that is hashtag we can map using some softwares. And then we can see how these words are associated with other words. If a person if one person is a micro influencer about Sri Lanka, so that micro influence is attached with another micro influencers. On what words they have been attached with other micro influencers, on what aspect Sri Lanka is most populated by these micro influencers in social media. Likewise, a lot of research can be undertaken with this online data today, and they are free, less expensive, and more importantly, genuine. Right? And today, due to this data science and big data analysis, we can analyze millions of posts. Today, it's possible. Those days, actually, our computers did not have that capacity. But today, if you take 1 minute, how many new posts things are posted in social media? Right? So we can analyze millions of posts today using these big data analytical tools. That's why we call big data, right? It's not limited data. We can analyze even large amount of data today. Right. So finally, those are qualitative end. Just to give finally before the break. Today there is another approach that is emerging. That is the mixed method. Mixed method means in a one research you can combine both quantitative and qualitative. And so for example, qualitative research is more popular in countries like UK. Quantitative research is more popular in USA. But countries like Australia, New Zealand, actually a lot of universities now they promote mixed method, where you combine both quantitative and qualitative, and they argue that you can't be a dogmatic researcher. You can't be purely qualitative research or quantitative research, because when we try to understand something, there are both qualitative and quantitative elements to understand. Now, for example, if you want to give a good description about Arvind Singh from Sanat Jaiswal, right? One aspect of this story is figures. His average, how many fastest 15, right? The number of centuries,